All right, welcome back to the Soul Hoops channel. It is me, Ryan, and I am in a new location. I just moved, still getting settled in, so I don't really have a ton here. I've got the flag up, which is cool, but nothing really much else right now. I'll probably put some Timberwolves stuff up around here, make it a little bit like so. There's more stuff going on in the background, but anyway, I am recording a solo video just to kind of talk about the NBA news that happened today because we aren't recording another pod until Thursday. We've got a special guest for that one, so stay tuned for that episode. We'll be doing the the Northwest Division of the Western Conference, going through every team. But in the meantime, we got some NBA news today. We got a few pieces of news today, but obviously the most important bit was the Jrue Holiday to the Boston Celtics trade. This broke about 4 hours ago from Adrian Wojnarowski, however you say it, just Woj. Portland Trailblazers are trading guard Jrue Holiday to the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are trading Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, a 2024 Golden State Warriors first-round pick, a 2029 unprotected Boston first-round pick. Yeah, and that's the deal. So first reactions for me was, okay, Boston gave up a lot for Jrue Holiday. Obviously, Jrue Holiday is so good. We know that. I mean, probably the best guard defender in the game right now. One of the best guard defenders we've ever seen. Really solid offensive player too. Good playmaker. Big frame. Can post up a little bit, get to the rim. The three-pointer has really come around in recent years for him too. So, I mean, amazing player, Jrue Holiday. I feel like every single team in the NBA would want a player like Jrue Holiday, but Celtics did give up a lot for him. I mean, Robert Williams, in my opinion, is like one of the most important pieces on that team defensively. I think in the 2021-2022 season, Robert Williams should have won Defensive Player of the Year over his teammate Marcus Smart. That's how impactful of a defender I think he is. So seeing him get traded is big, right? Like that's kind of a big deal. See him go. Malcolm Brogdon, they had already tried to trade him once this summer to the Clippers into what was like a previous iteration of a Porzingis deal. Fell apart because of Malcolm Brogdon's injury history in his I think his knee, right shoulder, elbow. I don't know. I don't remember, but that already happened. They finally moved him. I don't know how aggressively they've been trying to move him since then. There were some rumblings that he was unhappy in Boston after they tried to trade him, and it kind of fell through. But they got him off a Golden State Warriors first-round pick and a 2029 Boston first-round pick. The picks aren't like those picks are fine, but Rob Will and Malcolm Brogdon is a lot to give up for Jrue Holiday. That was my first reaction. But also, you think about it for Boston, it's like, okay, this kind of does make a lot of sense, right? I don't think Derek White was ever really going to be the best point guard as like a long-term, main starting point guard. This is not really his game. I think he's much better as a 2 or maybe like an off the bench 1, but they actually get their point guard now in Jrue Holiday. And that starting lineup for Boston is like looking really good. I mean, Jrue Holiday at the 1. I think it's going to be Derek White at the 2, Jaylen Brown at 3, Jason Tatum at 4, and then Porzingis at the 5. Bring Al Horford off the bench. So, yeah, I mean, really good starting 5. We can talk about what that kind of means relative to the rest of the Eastern Conference or the NBA in a second, but just kind of starting small here. It's like, Boston, it's a perfect fit on the court, right? Like, I don't think anybody's gonna refute that it's a great fit on the court for Boston. But I guess my thing is, like, my first reaction was they gave up a lot, and I still think that to a degree. I mean, as I've had some time to kind of sit with it, I do definitely understand that, like, there's an arms race going on in the Eastern Conference right now, and the Bucks made their big swing last week, and you think about it from the Celtics perspective, I kind of thought at the time that happened, it was like, okay, the Celtics have kind of slid behind as the number 2 to the Milwaukee Bucks. And I don't really think that's changed. I still think Milwaukee is probably the favorite to come out the East. probably my favorite in the entire league, to be honest, over a Denver or Phoenix. The Celtics getting Jrue Holiday is also really big for them too. That's a big get for that team. They've had some playmaking issues. That's no secret. They've had playmaking issues for years now, and I don't think Jrue Holiday is like the playmaking wizard that will just fix all of that. But I think he can fix it to a degree. Having like more of a table setting point guard out there kind of replicates a lot of what Marcus Smart did on defense to like a higher degree. Even is a better shooter than Marcus Smart. So overall upgrade for Marcus Smart. Like we aren't gonna talk about that. I guess like I said, my only thing with it is that they gave up a lot, and we can talk about that for Portland in a second too. But this trade, it makes sense for the time it happens, right? They kind of fell behind a little bit from the Dame thing, and Brad Stevens, I'm sure, noticed that and was like, okay, we got to start being a bit more aggressive in these trades, or just find something before the training camp starts that we can just bring in and kind of stay and kind of hang up with Milwaukee a little bit. And the player that Milwaukee sent out to get Dame, they brought back in. Celtics did, Jrue Holiday. So Celtics, super interesting. I think if this works out for the Celtics, like if this trade is just like, if it works out, like they could win the championship. Like, so I completely get it from their perspective, like why you should want to make this deal now. But I don't know, like Robert Williams, just seeing him goes, like it doesn't sit right with me. I feel like the Celtics are really gonna regret that in a few years. Just a powerful player on defense and on offense, right? As a lob catcher, which Al Horford in his old age can't do, and Porzingis isn't like quick enough to do that. Robert Williams, even like cutting, attacking in open space and transition, I think really solid offensive player. And then obviously on defense, like one of the best defensive centers in the entire NBA. Legitimately, like especially as like a help side roamer, it's really hard to replicate what Robert Williams has done for that team. And the Celtics team already is pretty thin on depth, and they got thinner with this trade, sending out 2 players in exchange for 1 with Jrue Holiday. So like the starting lineup, I have no issues with that, because that starting lineup is going to be good. The bench worries me for sure. I mean, after like, okay, so if either Al Horford or Derek White comes off the bench, who's their 7th guy? Is it O'Shea Brissett? Wenyen Gabriel, who just signed today? Is it Sam Hauser? Peyton Pritchard? We just have no idea. And those guys none of them are like you can really trust in the playoffs that much. So depth issues for the Boston Celtics, but also some depth issues for Milwaukee too. We aren't going to act like those aren't there. They signed Campaign today to bring off the bench as their backup point guard, which I think is a pretty good move. A bit like predictable almost. I mean, that was like once Campaign got waived for the Spurs, I definitely was thinking, okay, what team could use a backup point guard? You think of like Minnesota, you think of Milwaukee, you think of these teams that could really use that backup PG, and like Milwaukee just makes sense. I mean, they're trying to win a championship. Campaign is a player that we've seen can contribute to a finals team, not a finals winning team, but a finals team. I mean, the Suns were up 2-0 against the Milwaukee Bucks in 2021. So obviously they've been close. With Campaign as a backup point guard, he can come in Milwaukee, do the same thing. What else? Jrue Holiday. Yeah, just those were like my first reactions when it came to the Jrue Holiday stuff. Like, yeah, big win for the Celtics starting lineup. Depth questions. They gave up a lot. Losing Robert Williams hurts. Losing Malcolm Brogdon doesn't hurt as much. He was a bit disappointing for them last season from my point of view. Maybe I was overrating Malcolm Brogdon coming to that team, but I thought Malcolm Brogdon was going to be I thought he was going to be their starting point guard. I thought they were going to start Malcolm Brogdon at the 1, move over Marcus Smart, have Derek White come off the bench, and it was the opposite. So I was wrong on that one, but they're giving up on Malcolm Brogdon after 1 year. He shot the ball extremely efficiently, but that's just kind of what he does. Didn't play that much of an impact as I thought he would have. The injuries are just going to be there with him. He's always injured. That's why he didn't get traded to the Clippers, because the Clippers said no. So yeah, rumblings that he was unhappy. Whatever. We just talked about that. Yeah, I'm a bit all over the place. So maybe you guys like the style of video. I don't know. It's certainly easy for me to record, and this is kind of just the way I think about ball most of the time. On the podcast, it's kind of nice because we can like bounce back and forth and think of things while the other person's talking. But just me right now, just giving my raw thoughts out there. So yeah, let's talk about the Portland side of it. So they're already looking to shop Malcolm Brogdon. We got a report pretty much not even like an hour after the trade happened saying from Woj saying that there have already been multiple teams that have called about Malcolm Brogdon who have expressed interest. And that is another super interesting piece to talk about, because even though I just said Malcolm Brogdon was a bit disappointing for the Celtics, I still think that Malcolm Brogdon could go to most teams and really contribute either off the bench or even a starter. Like I can't even give a list of the teams that would be interested in Malcolm Brogdon because the list would just be long. Nekias Duncan, I think, tweeted out his own list of teams that he thinks that could be interested, and I can probably read that off right now if I can find it. Let's see. Yeah, he says Memphis, Minnesota, Miami, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Cleveland, Toronto. They should all make calls. I completely agree, and then some. Like, more teams should be calling him Malcolm Brogdon. One of the most efficient shooters in the entire NBA. Decent playmaker, plays fast, just like a good player everybody wants on a decent contract too. So they're gonna trade him. I could see a world where it makes a bit of sense to keep him on the team, but I also think Malcolm Brogdon wants to contend, and that's an asset teams want. So you might as well just flip him while you can. Robert Williams, I don't know how much sense that makes on Portland's, given how they just traded for DeAndre Ayton last week. I like Ayton is the kind of player where it feels like if he knows that he doesn't the team doesn't have full confidence in him, it's almost like you can see that in his own play. And I do worry a little bit that like DeAndre Ayton could see this move and be like, oh my God, they're trying to like replace DeAndre Ayton. That's not how it is. So that's maybe I'm just overblowing that. That's a potential risk, maybe. I don't really know how they could play DeAndre Ayton and Robert Williams together, because the reason they played two bigs and it worked in Boston is because Al Horford is like an amazing 3-point shooter. And when they weren't playing two bigs, they just had Robert Williams out there alone as the 5 next to Tatum at the 4. So obviously, if that's how they did it this season for Portland, it would be a much different look if they were to play two non-shooting centers together at the same time. You just don't see that in the NBA anymore. Except if both non-shooting centers are like wicked defensive centers like Cleveland. But you look at every other team that plays two bigs at the same time in the NBA, and at least one of them is a shooter. Like Minnesota, Cat's a shooter. Boston, like I just said, Al Horford was always the shooter for that team. You think of like the Celtics when they've run multiple big lineups with Embiid at the 4 or 5. He's a shooter. The Lakers, I mean, Anthony Davis, his shot comes and goes, but if they play him next to Christian Wood for any portion of the season, Christian Wood is a shooter. So that's just kind of an example of how these things usually work with two bigs. So I don't really know how Portland is going to manage that. I mean, I suppose they could bring Robert Williams off the bench, but that he seems too good to bring off the bench. At that point, you might as well just trade him to a team that needs a center like that. I mean, Boston or not Boston, Dallas Dallas would love to have a Robert Williams in that team, a lob catcher with Luka and Kyrie, a player to anchor that defense next to Grant Williams, who we played with just last year. Makes a lot of sense for me, but I haven't heard any rumblings or haven't seen anything about Portland shopping Robert Williams around, just Malcolm Brogdon. So, bit of an awkward fit. I just don't really understand the Robert Williams inclusion in the deal from either side, other than they just need one more asset to kind of feel better about Jrue Holiday being sent out because he's so good. So that's kind of why I think it ended up like that. But I don't really get it for Boston, and I don't really get it for Portland. The whole Robert Williams thing. I kind of just wish that's like, I don't know. They hope. I mean, in a perfect world, they could have just found a way to get the deal done with somebody else, or not having to include Robert Williams in that trade. But they did. So, also just this morning, Robert Williams was on like a radio show saying how he wanted to stay in Boston long term and how much he loved it. And it's like, damn, he got traded like 6 hours after that, or not even. He got traded like 3 hours after that. So, league's a business. That's how it works. What else? What else? Okay, so Miami. We got to talk about Miami a little bit because after they struck out on Dame, they had interest in Jrue Holiday. But to be honest, like I just didn't really see a world where like Miami and Portland could go back to negotiating about Jrue Holiday without it being like awkward or weird. So that's probably why it didn't happen. Like, I don't know if Cronin and Pat Riley could just go back to being like, okay, you you didn't give us Dame after 2 months of him wanting to be there, so how about Jrue Holiday? So that's just not going to happen. Miami had a pretty sad offseason, if you ask me. This maybe they'll get desperate and go after James Harden, which I would like laugh my ass off if that happens. But yeah, Miami loses again. We'll see what happens with them. They'll be active in talks for point guards throughout the season once things happen. But yeah, another Miami L. Jrue, so yeah, I mean the Eastern Conference it's an arms race right now, right? The Bucks and the Celtics have been pooling up their assets, ready to go to war. It seems like a Celtics Bucks Eastern Conference Finals is inevitable, just because those teams have created such space between themselves and the teams below them. Like I don't think a Cleveland is going to be able to hang with either a Milwaukee or Boston in the second rounds. Philadelphia, I don't think they have enough anymore. They just don't. Miami, they just find ways to get it done, but I just don't believe they have enough in this scenario to beat either Milwaukee or Boston with the respective additions of Dame and Jrue Holiday. So that's kind of why I think they're out of the cards right now. So yeah, Eastern Conference is really heating up. I think there's a good chance that whoever comes out of the East might just win the whole thing. Even though we kind of thought that last year. So Denver ended up just being too good. But you kind of look at the broader NBA right now, and I think the Celtics are obviously an inner circle contender. Milwaukee is an inner circle contender. Denver is absolutely still there, and I would probably say they're my second favorite team to come out of the NBA, the whole NBA, and win the championship. The Los Angeles Lakers. If if I think what we saw last year post trade deadline is super replicable, and I think it's pretty real. Especially with Austin Reeves kind of carrying on what he did. Anthony Davis hopefully being healthy. All of that. So I think maybe Golden State. I'll probably put Golden State in there, give them the benefit of the doubt. I'd probably still say they're one of the inner circle contenders, but probably lower on that list, just because are they? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the West kind of runs through Denver at this point. So I can see Golden State like putting together like a gritty 7 games and beating Denver if like all goes right for Golden State and all goes wrong for Denver. Um, I could see that happening. But so I think there are 6 legitimate inner circle contenders in the NBA right now. And I don't have like a real power rankings, but I'd probably go Milwaukee, Denver, Boston, Phoenix, LA, Golden State in that order. So I mean, things are heating up. I think this is going to be an exciting season. I'm actually like, of all the seasons I've been um, kind of keeping track of and following in my kind of NBA fandom. Um, so the 16-17 season and onward to current, I don't think I've ever been more excited for a for a season. Legitimately, like there are so many like interesting storylines in the NBA and so many interesting teams who have been piling up their assets, ready to kind of make their swing and make their run. Um, Also the Timberwolves season. So I'm excited for that. Obviously, there's a lot to be excited for sure. This NBA season, the Jrue Holiday thing is one of those things. And yeah, I don't think I have to cover much else here. These are just like my raw thoughts. About 4 hours after the trade broke. So this will go up today on Sunday, October 1st. And we will record the podcast on Thursday. That'll be up Friday. I'm sure we'll have more solo content throughout this week. Now that I'm settled in my new place, I have quicker access to all my recording stuff. Because the first month of school, I was commuting from my parents' house to campus, and that commute was long, and I didn't have like the resources around me to have things being worked on or rendered or processed when I was attending class. So now I will. So content will kind of be back to where it was in like July, August. So I'll record a solo thing. Probably tomorrow, or that'll come up. That'll be up eventually. Podcast on Thursday, and oh yeah, check out our Dame podcast, episode 13. Check out whatever else. I don't know. Just check all our content out for sure. So, all right. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.